as suggested by Rod Serling in the now classic opening monologue from Season 1 of The Twilight Zone, describing the shadow realm within. This fictional realm between science and superstition, however, was not exclusively occupied by the Twilight Zone alone. In some of the greatest of what has been specifically categorized as science fictional horror films, has often represented a kind of genre overlap that gave audiences the best of both worlds. Not just in the film itself, but in the memorable characters, those who represented the wonder of sci-fi and perfectly interwoven with the most chilling of horror ideas. On that note, here are the 10 greatest creature or monster creations of horror sci-fi films. You've just entered the FrightenHouse. Number 10, The Omega Man, 1971. The tagline from the second adaptation of Richard Matheson's novel, I Am Legend, said it all. The last man alive is not alone. Charlton Heston's Dr. Robert Neville was indeed the last survivor in a city where the night belonged to the murderous, seemingly living dead victims of a plague brought on by Russia and China's world-sweeping biological warfare. Born from the worst abuse of science, the Omega Man's so-called family were just as chilling as anything crawling its way out of a grave. Number 9, Them, 1954. Early in atomic age films, where radiation turned the animal kingdom into monsters, Them transformed ants into oversized horror, with man-eating colonies spreading from New Mexico to Los Angeles. Although law enforcement and the military kill the giant ants, the film's thoughtful Dr. Harold Medford leaves the audience with a chilling warning about man's use of atomic power.
When man entered the atomic age, he opened a door into a new world. What we'll eventually find in that new world, nobody can predict.
Almost promising, where one horror ends, another is set to begin. Number 8, The Fly, 1958 and 1986. As film versions of George Langeland's short story of The Fly, whether discussing the James Clavell screenplay for the 1958 original or the David Cronenberg directed remake in 1986, both were unforgettable in telling the tragic, gruesome tale of a scientist becoming the mutating victim of his matter transporter. As seen in both films, the sci-fi was a fantastic vehicle for the heart-sinking fright of a man rapidly losing his human identity to an insect, with the only option being left, self-destruction. Number 7, This Island Earth, 1955. Among the spectacular, futuristic settings and moral conflicts of this standout sci-fi drama was the Metaluna Mutant, which wasted no time dragging terror into this film with its attacks on human Dr. Ruth Adams and one from his own world, Exeter. Number 6, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, 1954. Universal's last truly classic monster icon made a splash every bit as frightening as his predecessors. But his story was, as forcefully stated in The Creature's original and now famous 1954 movie trailer, the most terrifying of the science fiction adventures. Number 5, Predator, 1987. This was no cutesy, wobbling alien looking for friends or to add humanity to the galactic family. This marauding, calculating thing saw humans as live game to be viciously slaughtered for sport. No negotiation or mercy from this space-borne horror. Number 4, The Thing, 1951, and 1982. Although both versions sprang from John W. Campbell's novella, Who Goes There?, the creatures of both films featured unrelenting extraterrestrials with no interest in anything other than the forceful destruction or takeover of humankind for reasons as otherworldly as the creatures themselves. Number 3. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, 1932. The ultimate example of the self-sacrificing scientist gone wrong. Henry Jekyll's experiments to unearth the allegedly suppressed darker side of man or beast of instinct released a regressed, violent, murderous monster acting on the absolute worst of behavior that man was right to bury. Number 2. Alien, 1979. Taking a number of influences from sci-fi and horror films of the 50s and 60s, the assembled talents behind the first of the undying Alien franchise flipped the idea of the isolated humans versus monster on the loose concept by creating an alien species where every phase of its physical development exacerbated some of man's darkest fears about space, animals, and even his place in the food chain. Number 1. Frankenstein, 1931. The unnamed monster and the film stand as the perfect marriage of science fiction and horror, and arguably the most influential film of its kind in cinema history. James Whale's derivative adaptation of the Mary Shelley classic had man splice abominable ambition with science, only to end up with an abused, resentful powerhouse who walked the line between being more than the sum of its reanimated parts and being a brutal shocker. That's all for this episode of FrightenHouse.
Sneered at the miracles of science. You who have denied the power of man to look into his own soul. You who have derided your superiors. Look.
Comment below and let us know, what are some of your favorite monster creations of the horror sci-fi film genre? Don't forget to like this video, share this episode, and be sure to subscribe to FrightenHouse on YouTube for all updates and new episodes. Thanks for watching.